Sudan and South Sudan. It is the longest-running conflict in Africa. It was once a nation that represented hope for peaceful coexistence between Arab and African, Muslim and Christian. That promise of Sudan is gone, with calamitous fatalities, economic erosion, devastated infrastructure, and the suffering to the people of Sudan insurmountable. But what is the cause of this hostility? The reality is, the story of Sudan is incredibly complex, with a host of security, economic, and political issues stemming from South Sudan's independence last year. Andrew Natsios is a professor at Georgetown University and a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Mr. Natsios served as administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development from 2001 to 2005, where he was appointed as Special Humanitarian Coordinator for Sudan. He also served as Special Envoy to Sudan from October 2006 to December 2007. He wrote the book Sudan, South Sudan, and Darfur that introduces readers to central issues facing Sudan as it stands on the brink of historic change.
One of the big clashes in southern Sudan is that the northern half of the country is Arabized Africans, many of whom have lost their African language and think of themselves as Arabs, but they in fact are Africans racially. The south is principally traditional religion and Christianity. So there's a religious and a racial and a cultural clash between the two that is very powerful, that has been going on for a very long time. You've had this two civil wars between 1956 and today in which 4 million Southerners died. It's one of the most brutal civil wars in the 20th century. There have been two attempts to end the Civil War, one under President Numeri in the early 1970s. In January of 2005, I was at the signing ceremony in Nairobi, Kenya. It was the beginning of a process, though, for implementing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, which ended this second time, this civil war. The problem is that the North, which has always been unstable, is destabilized even further. The complication of all this is that the North and the South are economically intertwined because of the discovery of oil many years ago. In 1998, that oil started being pumped into pipelines that went from southern Sudan, which is where most of the oil fields are, through the north. The problem is the oil revenues have dramatically dropped because the south is now getting these oil revenues. And the north said, look, you need to give us half those revenues. And the south said, we're independent now. We'll pay you the going rate around the world for piping oil through another country, because there are oil pipelines across national boundaries all over the world. The going rate is 67 cents a barrel, okay? The North asked for $38 a barrel. So in early February of this year, the South shut down the oil wells, and so basically since February 1st, the North and the South have been at war. The South has allies in the North that are Muslim, that are secular Muslims, that want a democratic state that protects human rights and a full democracy, multi-party democracy that Bashir does not want. So the war is not over. It started again. But this is not a guerrilla war now. This is two conventional armies of enormous size. The Southern Army is actually larger than the Northern Army, and it's more motivated. And Napoleon said that the Southern Army is at least 150,000 troops. The Northern Army is probably 100,000 troops. The thing that the North has that the South does not have is an air force. And the North has been relentlessly bombing. Now, most of the air force are mercenaries from Egypt, from Iran, from Russia. And the reason is that they can't trust their own air force officers. So this bombing is basically by a mercenary air force. We should be providing air defense systems, which is a defensive weapon, to the South, who are allies of ours and friends of ours. They're the most pro-American country in Africa, in fact probably in the world right now, is South Sudan. And they are natural allies of the United States. They want a democracy, they want, they're pro-free market, they want to be allied with the West, and they want nothing to do with spreading radical Islamist ideology in Africa, which is why many African countries are supporting the South. And I might add, there's another element here that's missed. The closest ally northern Sudan has, and has had since 1989, is Iran. The Iranian Navy has unlimited access to Port Sudan. The Iranian intelligence service has intimate connections with and treaties with the Sudanese intelligence service. There are Iranian-run munitions factories in Greater Khartoum producing weapons for the northern Sudanese army. They have economic exchange programs. Bashir goes to Tehran all the time. And there are reports, I cannot confirm them, that the northern government of Sudan has spent billions of dollars to buy land in Tehran so that if there is a coup or they're deposed in a revolution in the north, they can all leave to go to Tehran to live.
We know your stance. We know you believe the U.S. should provide military aid to the South.
Just anti-aircraft weapons.
Can the U.S. afford to do so?
We have been providing military assistance to southern Sudan even before the peace agreement was signed between the North and the South. All we need to do is take the existing appropriation, which I believe is $40 million a year, and convert it into, it does not allow now weapons. We could change the law specifically to allow an air defense system with that money. We don't need to put any additional funding in.
How much chance does South Sudan have to stay an independent state without U.S. military aid?
They don't need our troops. Their troops are very skilled. They're ferocious fighters. The North is terrified of them, I have to tell you at this point. The northern generals believe the only way they're going to win, which what they think they can do, is to bomb the South into oblivion. And we cannot allow that to happen, in my view. Because the base of operations for Iran in all of sub-Saharan Africa is northern Sudan.
South Sudan uses child soldiers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but UNICEF reports an estimate of 2,000. I mean, it's a human rights violation
Well,
to
it is
support
according
that.
to international conventions. None of these kids are being abducted against their will. Garang ordered, and so did Salva Kiir, the current president, who was deputy commander of the Southern Army called the SPLA, that they start demobilizing child soldiers. And they did do that.
Right.
Okay? But there's enormous pressure in the South to join the military. Kids want to do it. They want that to be their career. Okay? Do I support it? No, I accept the international conventions. But the reality is the kids in the South want to do it. They're not being forced into it. It's not an abusive thing at all. Is it a violation of the conventions? Yes, it is. Should we discourage it? We should. But we should understand the context. This is not like the Lord's Resistance Army, which is bringing kids in by murdering people and committing atrocities. That is not what's happening here. Those 2,000 kids were because of the cultural ideal of the warrior in southern Sudan, want to join. UNICEF should be careful in comparing the child soldiers in the Southern Army with child soldiers in other areas of Africa where they're basically recruited into the military at gunpoint. That is not true in southern Sudan.